that possibly would have been either difficult or fragmented for policymakers to get access to. So the guidance of the ILO team in number one, the access to international consultants, and number two, international best practices in making sure that consolidation, as well as any new compliance that is incorporated, is in line with international standards. Could we move ahead? And then the second governance pillar was increased labor administration capacity, and there has been no question in how these trainings have benefited. For example, the Oslo trainings, where inspectors were trained on occupational training, safety and laws, and it has created a cultural shift in the mindset of inspectors from an enforcement point of view, from an enforcement mindset to a monitoring mindset. So that cultural shift, that behavioral shift has been evident. There has been through the ADRS training, for example, where inspectors learn meditation, arbitration, and negotiation skills that were not there previously. Not only have they been able to increase their own skill sets, but now are at a capacity to train. So they have basically become the train the trainer model, where they can now train other inspectors, train other administrators on. Excuse me. So moving ahead, please. So during our engagements with policymakers from different departments, different provinces, we had the opportunity of meeting the representative from Balochistan a bit late in the process, which is why this particular province, we have just noted down the insights from our conversation with Balochistan, and the impacts there have been clear in the legislative and in the policymaking side, where rules of business have been drafted, capacity building trainings have been very successful in building the capacity of inspectors. There was one, there was one area that we found was evident in Balochistan that was not hinted upon in other provinces, and that was when you move from an enforcement mindset to a monitoring mindset, or when you're a mentoring mindset, you need to create awareness, and you need to have awareness campaigns where you tell the enterprises what they're supposed to do before you enforce any punitive action. So these awareness campaigns, ILO has been instrumental in through hiring a third party in creating awareness campaigns of what the changes have been, what new labor policies have been in the pipeline through the social media platforms of, I think, Facebook and Instagram. The main idea is to create awareness before enforcement, and this is a model that the Balochistan province is taking up as a sustainability measure for the future as well. So this was one area that we found was implemented in Balochistan that we have not found. And we have full caveat, we have yet to hear from KP, so maybe it is replicated there, but this was one area that the Balochistan government was really appreciative of. Next slide, please. Sustainability of initiatives, enhancing labor standard reporting capabilities by enhanced GSP reporting capabilities was also one that has came up again and again. And GSP plus reporting capacity building in Sindh, in Punjab, as well as in Balochistan was reported as a great success, where stakeholders felt that previously, all the compliance reporting was not, it was not up to the mark, it was not up to par, but after the multiple trainings and technical notes that have been prepared by ILO for assistance, for guidance, and for sustainability, this is now something that they can take forward as well. Could Could we have the next slide, please? So, like any program of this scope and this scope and this scale, even though there have been multitude of successes and positive impacts, there still remain some challenges that still need to be addressed. And I will briefly touch upon a few of those. For sustainability, we found that a lot of enterprises felt that as long as ILO was there to support the interventions, these interventions could be piloted and could be taken forward, but unless and until there's a leadership buy-in, they're not going to be sustained for a long time. And leadership buy-in generally comes when leadership is made aware of the long-term impacts and the long-term financial benefits to a particular enterprise. So unless and until there's leadership buy-in, possibly changes are not going to be sustained. And then there was this problem of retention of skilled and trained labor. ILO's interventions can have help in capacity building, but retaining those workers for continued sustainability of productivity is still a challenge. Then financial constraints for the uptake of these interventions after the ILO program ends is a big problem that was articulated by especially small enterprises, because as one enterprise, as it was mentioned, that if there's a cost of 4 to 5 lakhs related to a 3-day training of employees, it's not going to be very sustainable unless and until there's some external help that comes in for small firms to carry these interventions forward. So even though there's a great impact, for when these interventions are in place, it's not always sustainable because of the financial cost attached to it. Next slide, please. Other challenges apart from the sustainability challenges have been specifically for the short time frame allowed for the pilot interventions. It was noted that these were the enterprises could have benefited more in running the implementation for longer timeframes to realize the maximum potential of the enterprises. So for example, if these enterprises were in place for 2 to 4 months, that was not sufficient time for either the enterprise management or the workers to actually see the benefit and also to see if they wanted to carry it on long term, because in 2 to 4 months, maybe the pilot was not run for enough time. Then a few enterprises, and these are the big enterprises, that they focused on the enterprises that already had certain other programs, for example, by USAID or UNDP or GIZ. They said, we are doing the same thing with these other organizations as well, or we have already done it. And the documentation process that we have to follow for example, the ILO intervention, plus say someone is doing it with GIZ is time-taking, sometimes it can seem redundant. We keep doing the same thing again and again. So maybe there's a way to choose enterprises that have not been a part of other interventions. That might be a good way forward, or maybe somehow combining the documentation and the procedural process for both would be beneficial, because this, like I said, does not directly in the short term relate to productivity. So it can create hurdles of why someone should, take on additional burden of another exercise that replicates a lot of documentation. And then, as mentioned earlier by Dr. Fariha as well, for the legislative development purpose, it was reported by specifically the Pakistan Worker Federation and a few enterprise owners that their input was not sufficiently incorporated, or the term that was used was that there was a lack of meaningful involvement. Even though they were involved, there was a lack of meaningful involvement whereby they could not voice all of their concerns. I completely realize that is a problem that is possibly going to be a part of all tripartite conversations, and you cannot, there cannot be an ideal situation. However, since this was raised multiple times, this was an important challenge to note at the program level. Could we move ahead? So in addition to these program level challenges that are directly related to ILES, there are certain systemic and structural challenges that impact the program as a whole, that impacts the sustainability and efficacy of the program as a whole, even though realizing that ILO might not have a direct impact or these interventions might not do much to alleviate these. But we felt that it was important to put these systemic and structural challenges as part of the reporting as well. So one aspect was that there's a limited impact on the GSP. So for GSP plus status, there are two aspects that we came across. One was GSP plus reporting capacity building by the governments, and the other was GSP plus status of the country that could be supplemented by labor law compliance at the enterprise level. So for the enterprise level, it was felt, and multiple people shared this, that GSP plus compliance does not just rest within individual enterprises, but it sort of spans the whole supply chain. So any intervention that is applied piecemeal on enterprises is likely not going to have it's not going to move the needle on Pakistan's GSP plus status as far as being an exporting country is concerned. So that was one area that we felt was worth a note. Then, like Dr. Fariha mentioned earlier as well, even though this process itself, the interventions themselves were conducive for promoting gender equity within enterprises, there are broader structural issues, societal issues of harassment and safety and security that in certain areas restrict women from participating in enterprises. So despite all the best intentions of enterprises at heart to maybe increase gender equality, it might not always be possible to do so, and that might have an impact on an enterprise's export capacity, despite not being an internal issue. So this was another systemic issue. Next slide, please. So after having pointed out these few challenges that we have, there were certain opportunities for strengthening the project for the future that was suggested as well. And the first one that came up was tailoring interventions to firm maturity levels. So through this project, we talked to quite a few different levels of firms, so small firms as well as large firms. And what was felt was that mature firms likely have already had an exposure with such interventions in the past, and they already are exporting firms. So client requirements necessitate them to have a lot of these checklists already in place. So they might benefit more from complex interventions. However, a new enterprise might even lack the basic labor management systems. So they would need more foundational support rather than the same intervention applied as a blanket for all level of enterprises. So if there are different iterations of the interventions that are based on the firm's maturity level, that might be more beneficial. Then another opportunity of note would be enhancing accountability through regular management reviews of the intervention. So how the interventions have been faring should have an accountability audit rather than just focusing on performance audits of the workers, but how an intervention has been working should also be audited. Next, please. And then again, for leadership buy-in, that was discussed as a challenge. Having some leadership training to create those buy-ins would be beneficial. And then something that came up was incorporating culturally competent training modules where some workers and some employees at the management level felt that the trainings, even though they were extremely beneficial, but they were delivered in a more formal English than a regular worker would be able to understand. So if there could be options for certain culturally relevant training modules, those would be more helpful in creating content that's accessible and understandable to increase overall effectiveness of the training. I think that's the end of my section, Dr. Fariha. Over to you.
Thank you. So just in the interest of time, I won't be explaining this. You can have a glance on the our last technique of outcome harvesting, again, a retrospective approach that works backwards and collect evidence of what change has happened over time. And then it determines whether we can attribute this change to the particular interventions that we leveraged. So just like I'm going to glance through it and not explain this because we have quite long into the presentation. So again, this is based on data, all the percentages that are coming, like shared decision-making endorsed by 96% worker and enterprise respondents. So we have given a description, a significance, and the contribution of the initiative that actually determines this percentage. And I mean, these are the outcome statements concerning the labor, and knowledge of labor standards improved by 96%, improvement in worker skill and capabilities endorsed by 92% worker enterprise respondent, improved process management, 92%, cultural shift in manager-worker relation endorsed by 92%, again, strengthened accountability mechanism endorsed by 80%, cultural shift in enforcement officers' mindset, and it was endorsed by all the government and policy stakeholders that we interviewed, whatever province it was. So, I mean, they talked about this shift from, penalizing to actually contributing and trust building. And then, so I mean, this set of recommendations, but I think so before delving into these, we would like to open our floor for panelist discussion. And may I please invite Mr. Syed Nawab from GM Artistic Milliners for the thoughts around the eventual impact that this program created, especially from your experience of getting it leveraged into your firm, and the challenges that were along the way, and what must be the way forward. I mean, what design tweaks you would suggest, or what holistic manner it can be contribute. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here. Yeah, I'll just give you my point of view, because we have been running this program since 2016 or 17. And before that, we had a similar program which was managed by or started by UNDP. But इस program के advantage थे कुछ जो उसमें नहीं थे, because that program was dealing with workers class, labor, and क्योंकि the production mostly depends on, 99% production is done by laborers. Supervision वगैरह is supervisory area. जो इस program से impact create हुआ. Is it okay if I mix the language?
Yeah. Yes.
But
whatever you are comfortable with.
Everything is comfortable. I was just wondering if we can start off with Urdu also.
Yeah.
So, जो crucial areas होते हैं हमारे, वो है monitoring के, because production goes on a very fast pace. So target comes in a day before. We have to make so many pieces of so many products in a day, which comprises of 8 hours, and the workers, the supervisors, the managers, and the support departments like supply chain and all the other areas, they are just rushing in to fulfill those targets. People do not have time for training. See, that's the challenge. That's the main challenge. If you design the best training program, but people are so target focused that they're not released by their managers to attend those programs. So that has always been the case. I'm not going to into the solutions. I'll just say that what this program did. You see, Kaizen, basically small improvements. You give those, you give the authority to people or a lower level. I don't mean by lower level, people, workers and laborers. So as she in the reports, they have pointed out that the accountability part and the ownership part, they go hand in hand. And that was a very positive impact of this program. Because once you get the workers involved, what happens is they start feeling proud of it. Because I'm being asked a question and this is my product. Once that thing sets in, this program becomes extremely successful, and the impact, it's huge. When we started, we had 4 factories. Now we've got 16. So the program helped us to expand at a much faster pace because the impacts were very, very visible and very tangible. And of course, with the impacts, the profits followed. Our vision relies on profits, people, and planet. Where if you make good profits, you can involve your people, and then you can take care of the planet, the environmental side. But without profit, nothing works. So I'm just summarizing it, and the fact that this program helped us expand big time. Thank you.
So, thank
Any
you.
questions?
I'm definitely going to come for the second round. And may I please invite Mr. Haroon Kabir? So, I mean, one of the key takeaways personally for me was one of the statements that you mentioned in one of the interviews we had at Salcode, that this program gave you the direction. So, I mean, that stayed with us for quite some time, especially when we were compiling the report. So, how do you identify or attribute the changes that happened at particularly your enterprise and the way it was leveraged, and especially from the worker aspect and also from the enterprise variable aspect, productivity, sales, exports?
First of all, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much for calling me be a part of this panel team. And also I would like to thank you at the start, ILO, and also the funders, because without those, this program cannot be happened. With this program, we mainly worked into 3 or 4 areas. Firstly, workplace cooperation. When we work on workplace cooperation, we went through, and the things comes out that we never get participated over those people or those factors which are actually making or actually adding the value. For example, if there is some problem related to the sewing, related to the stitching, कौन है जो सबसे ज्यादा उसको जानता है? The person who is actually doing it. But before workplace cooperation, nobody get involved, or वो जो बंदा है उसको लाके बिठाया नहीं गया कि you just take your input that how we can solve this problem. With this activity we done with the ILO, we understand that this is very important. So we get participated, or our low-level staff, not low, we can say a worker-level staff, at all level, in quality, in productivity, in all other areas. With this, the statement which you said, which I already mentioned before, sari activity say at least we know where we need to look at. I mean, if we want to get the actual solution, then we need to dig deeper. पहले क्या होता है कि नॉर्मली जो इंडस्ट्री में है कि थिंग्स आर एक ऑर्डर देने वाला होता है और एक रिसीवर होता है, ऐसे कर लो, दिस इज अ प्रॉब्लम एंड यू जस्ट गेट द सॉल्यूशन एंड इम्प्लीमेंट इट. वो होता है नहीं होता, दैट डजंट मैटर. सो वर्कप्लेस कॉर्पोरेशन गिव अस अ direction. We get involved our those people who are actually those particular things are happening, जो वो लोग काम कर रहे हैं. Second area, we worked in the area of quality. We understand with this program that these are 3 aspects of quality. One, कितने में बना. दूसरा, सेकंड, जिस काम के लिए बना क्या वो उससे बेनिफिट हो रहा है, आई मीन, और जब चाहिए था तब मिला. प्राइस, टाइम, ऑन टाइम डिलीवरी जिसको हम कह सकते हैं, एंड does it serve the purpose? Before this project, this whole project, our direction was not goes to the time and the purpose of the product. We always think about this quality means you just need to raise the different aspects of the product to up level. For example, sewing को बेहतर करना है, cuts को बेहतर करना है, but time कहाँ गया? Does it serve the actual purpose? For example, if we just talk about the specific to the product which we are going to produce or we are producing already, those are safety tactical safety products. I mean वो product जो के front end के ऊपर एक बंदा जो कि अपने एक दुश्मन से एक गोली के सामने खड़ा है हमें बचाने के लिए, तो उसका पर्पस क्या है? टू सेव फ्रॉम दैट बुलेट और स्टैब. तो ये सारी चीजें क्वालिटी में हमें इस प्रोजेक्ट से मिली और डेफिनेटली आफ्टर दिस प्रोजेक्ट वी लॉन्च्ड 3 न्यू प्रोडक्ट्स which were never developed in our company before. So this is also achievement by this project in our company. And the third aspect was productivity. Once we monitor our different aspects of production, we realize there are a lot of waste we're doing already at the floor. For example, there's a 7 type floor. Our consultant was very generous और वो इस तरह की एग्जाम्पल देके हमें समझाते थे कि वो चीजें छप गई हैं हमारे वर्कर लेवल तक की जोनों में. तो वो once we work on the elimination of those particular mudas, we realize that our production almost raised by 50%. And definitely when we definitely cash this whole program as well. हमने इसको अपने customers को भी अपना approach किया. इस प्रोग्राम के लॉन्च होने के बाद हमारे 3 या 4 कस्टमर्स ने अपने बिजनेस को 3 टाइम बढ़ाया. एंड वी नीड टू इंक्रीज आवर कैपेसिटी. वी रीबिल्ड टू न्यू बिल्डिंग्स इन आवर फैक्ट्री, जो कि हमारी जो नई जो फोरकास्ट आ रही है उसको कवर करने के लिए. हालांकि दिस इज अ रिसेशन इन द वर्ल्ड, बट स्टिल वी गेट अ वेरी गुड projections from the customers. And the last impact is sustainability. Sustainability, we realize by this project that once things are getting implemented and follow नहीं किया जाता उसका फायदा नहीं है. Because जब इन चीजों को हम सस्टेन रखेंगे, लेके चलेंगे आगे, ये नहीं है कि 6 महीने हो गए खत्म हो गया. For that we made a permanent enterprise improvement team, which is वो अपनी जिस तरह से पहले वो मंथली मीटिंग्स करते थे वो अभी भी कर रहे हैं, तमाम इंडिकेटर्स को अभी भी फॉलो कर रहे हैं. और वो जो हमारी टॉप मैनेजमेंट है वो बहुत ज्यादा इसके ऊपर लीन है. So this is the overall impact this project done at our enterprise. Thank you.
Now coming to the implementer itself, Bilal Saab. So from the supply side, rolling out this massive program, rather a global program. I mean, we have success stories from across the countries of a SCORE program and implementing in Pakistan. So from implementers' point of view, do you think that did access to this program translated into optimal usage? How do you see the change happening over time, or how do you see that which aspect or which intervention stood out the most, and which pillar has been most important for ILO as an implementer that needs the most attention or that needed the most attention during the life of the program?
Thank you, Dr. Faria. One thing I think the interventions design the project, I would say I will give a credit by, it's not just by any chance, but with our ILO technical expertise and on the demand of the donors. The interventions were designed at from macro level to then meso, and then micro, and then coming down to the meta level. So like the project interventions have worked at the policy level, at the legislation level. The project intervention supported the institution in their capacity building and their legislation at the provincial level, as labor is a devolved subject now. And then again, going further down at the enterprise level, which our esteemed panelists have witnessed to it, and which STPI have also found in the field. And by doing all that, the project have also retained the record and also created a knowledge base of all these interventions. So by design, I would say the interventions are the implementation of such programs was very much needed, desired. And this is what ILO is committed to deliver, and with the help of all our stakeholders. The areas, as we have also witnessed in the impact assessment presentation and our also understandings, we have achieved more, I would say, in terms of results while working in enterprise at the field level, where we have bilateral partnership with the enterprises, and where the specific kind of technical expertise been facilitated through our independent and international consultants of ILO as well. And through a time frame which have been questioned as well, which could have been expanded as well. But in those time frames, we did achieve results in terms of productivity, efficiency, and coming to the worker satisfactions and employer satisfaction. So from policy or the legislative side, it's always difficult to bringing in all the stakeholders. And ILO being a tripartite institution itself, we have a long-lasting relation with our tripartite stakeholders and even tripartite plus stakeholders. But in the development sector, coming to areas where every stakeholders have their own lens to the challenges at the fields, convincing them and bringing them to the same page usually take times. And I think we have experienced that in our International Labour Environmental Standards project as well. But those challenges never meant I would say to question or challenge either the commitment from the stakeholders to address the challenges we have at the field level, from enterprises to the provinces where the labor departments are working, or at our federal counterparts. The stakeholders we have with us, they are committed for the positive change in the country, especially in the areas of labor standards and environmental standards. And these positive attitudes from our stakeholders, I think that gives us immense motivation, keep us going to roll out such programs and delivering for the working class of the country.
Thank you very much. And just building on this, may I invite Ms. Salia Nawaz, Project Officer, ILS, for her thoughts around this, and especially what were the challenges encountered for the implementation concerning the rollout of this program?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for a very thorough presentation. I mean, it really helps us to also reflect on our lessons learned. Because I oversaw the policy interventions specifically in Balochistan. There are there are internal and external factors that affect your work. And one of the external factors were the frequent turnover of the leadership in the provincial governments. And because once you start working with your provincial governments, it's very important that you have to keep the momentum with them. Because once you start an initiative, the initiative takes months to end. And at that time, if the leadership turns over, then it gives you that setback, and then you have to go back and then start from the scratch. And so this was one of the challenges that we face especially with the provincial governments. Secondly, our constituents are, when it comes to provinces, they are very diverse. Even within the trade unions, the workers' unions, the dynamics are very different from province to province. So if the situation in Punjab is stable, it's not the case in Balochistan. So another challenge was to take all the stakeholders together, because even there are fractions within our stakeholders. Just to name a few was the workers' federations, actually. So this was another lesson learned, or also a challenge for us. And the third challenge was specifically starting or beginning with the interventions where it needed the ownership of the constituents more than our ownership, because we really focus on the impact of what we do, and we want to make sure that it is sustainable even when ILES is not there, even when ILO is not there. And for that, you need to give this sense of ownership to your constituents. So for example, either it be employers, the workers, or the government, we started something based on their request, but then to cultivate that thought, or to change that behavioral, to bring that behavioral change in them, where they could own this support and take it forward, was another challenge. Because here in provinces specifically, there is a lot of support coming in from different INGOs, including different UN agencies, and also like GIZ or JICA and many others. So it's sometimes really hard to give this sense to your stakeholders or the constituents that the support they are getting is in their hand and they have to continue it. So even if ILES is not there, how they can sustain it. So this thing is really crucial, and it is not depending on one person. Again, there is a network of stakeholders, and if one person from that chain changes or gets transferred to another province, that impacts the entire chain. And so this was the third challenge that I think I personally faced. But nevertheless, despite many challenges, despite security situations, especially in Balochistan province, and also the political, once the political dynamics change, that also impacts the work, the project has tried its level best to bring change on policy level, on factory level when we talk about enterprises, and also on the societal level when we were interacting with our multiple stakeholders, like stakeholders who are not only employers or workers, but also the civil society, like HRCP in Balochistan, just to name a few. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite Mr. Ahmadullah Qazi. So, sir, you have been long associated with the ILES program, and we really would like to know that how you saw it evolving over time. I mean, it's a long time frame of 8 years of implementation, and especially from a donor point of view, where EU is supporting the rollout done by ILO. So from donors' point of view, how do you see at the eventual impact? Because every program, every project pursued by the development sector, it is driven by one notion, that is the end eventual impact created, which has to be, certainly it has to be, logically it has to be positive by the end of the day. So how do you see the sustainability aspect? How do you see the continuity aspect? How do you see the end results that have been generated by this program over time?
Thank you so much. So am I supposed to respond this to my period in ILO, or do I need to respond to this being an EU official now?
So, I mean, of course, I mean, you can definitely give, we have
I can start with my
mentor perspective. We can also have a donor perspective.
Sure, I can start with my experience being at ILO, and then I can quickly move towards when I was working for the EU. As Bilal had rightly identified, it was a very important program in itself, because ILO had been supporting the government of Pakistan in various ways, and the workers and employers. But it was really, in a way, the first time that it actually landed within the enterprise floors, and it actually wanted to work with them. So initially, it was quite challenging when ILO landed its feet over there, and I can see, thanks to your impact assessment, that with different interventions, it was able to have a significant impact, which I think Nawab Saab and also, sir, you also endorsed to quite certain levels. However, yes, it was quite a bumpy ride, which Guillermo also identified in the beginning, understanding the pandemic that was there, and there were some turnovers within the team, which were also understood. Not only turnovers on the ILO side, but also the program managers who were looking at this program at the EU side. However, having said that, it was a very important project both for the state of Pakistan as well as for the European Union support to Pakistan, because Pakistan is one of those countries which benefits from the GSP plus status, and it's been quite some years, and now lately it has had another 4 years of extension. And when this program was originally designed, it was mainly to prepare it for those thoughts of compliance which have now become a reality, and more of a requirement to be able to continue trading with the EU. So having said this, and when you talk about moving forward, EU continues to remain supportive towards Pakistan in our entire programs in order to help it improve towards its compliance, to prepare it for its upcoming tsunami of green deals that are coming to the state of Pakistan, also to the compliance requirements on the labor side. I understand this project also has had significant footprints when it comes to the environmental side, which, as you mentioned, maybe WWF is having a different impact assessment. And we've just recently conducted a third-party evaluation of this particular program, whose results would also be coming out very soon, where we would actually be looking at both the components and understanding what is going on. Having a look at it, I mean, we are glad that ILO was able to have a good impact on the productivity and competitiveness of the enterprises. However, we also take a note from your study that the compliance aspect still remained challenged, or see, so the idea of this particular project's design, as you would have, as you would determine from its name, is that it's the International Labor and Environmental Standards application in SMEs. And even for our future programs, we actually want to look into this, because generally the big fish out there who are able to export, they already have a good understand. They have already reached certain compliance levels because there's a good level of pressure from the buyers, and they're generally providing to those level of buyers who require a good stringent amount of compliance. However, this becomes more challenging for small to medium-sized enterprises who are A, resource constrained, and B, they also require the capacity to go up. So overall, I mean, but obviously we can't also expect this one particular project to completely change the dynamics of the entire sector. But we would also be very interested on how sustainable it is able to come forward. I do have some comments on the impact assessment that you had. If you allow, I could come to those. But all in all, we would hope that when this project closes, the ILO support to the tripartite constituents and the private sector continues through its other programs. We understand it is also implementing the Better Work program in the country. So that's where they're also there together with IFC. And then obviously it will have its own different programs and interventions that are there in the country. Coming to the impact assessment itself, I see this was understandably on the labor component side, and we're expecting something more on the environmental component coming soon, hopefully. But I also saw that on the labor component, most of the findings are very much enterprise focused. However, we would have hoped to also looked into, because having been associated with this project for quite some time, it has had a good footprint on the policy side as well. However, I didn't see that level coming in. You touched upon, when you speak of the DAC criteria, there's one aspect I think that was missed, which was coherence. Coherence is one of the determinants of DAC as well. And I think you touched upon it where you said that there were other programs like that, like the USAID GIZ one, which I think would have popped up and would have been interested to see in terms of impact, that when you're determining impact, what was the complementary factor? Because in the beginning, thank you so much. Because in the beginning of this project already had an understanding with the GIZ. Because initially, if you look, the project worked significantly in Karachi, and it was not really engaging more in Punjab, because there was an understanding with the colleagues from GIZ that it has a coherent factor where we would complement each other, where GIZ would take more lead on the Punjab side and we would take more lead on the Sindh side. However, that was then later on, considering the need and considering GIZ expanding its scope towards other aspects as well, we also, this particular project also started landing over there. So that was one. Then you clearly identify that the definition of firms that you divided as small, medium, and large was more mainly for this particular impact assessment, which obviously first when you mentioned, I was like, this doesn't even fall in this meta and the SPP one. For the exploratory data analysis that you did, I was very interested to see where was this Kaizen percentage data coming from? What was the source of this? Was this the project or was this the enterprise itself?
It was the assessments that have been done over time, the baseline, the interim 1, interim 2 that have been provided to us by ILO.
So this was based on the
structured questionnaires.
Under these programs.
Under particularly this program, I mean, structured questionnaires leveraged, and it's through these questionnaires that we actually had this data and we made this visualizations.
Okay, great. And one more thing was regarding the impact, the effectiveness part. We would have been very hopeful to also see what was the impact of this project in addition to productivity on the labor turnovers as well, because we heard that this is a major challenge when it comes to small and medium-sized enterprises as compared to large enterprises.
We have a whole part on that. Just in
so you do have that.
Yes, I mean, rather for the policy part, there's a whole set of slides that were hidden because we were waiting for Ms. Mariam Hadi to come in. So in the interest of time, we applied the DAC criteria on the policy part as well. And coherence is very much part of the report.
Sure. Okay.
And we have mentioned that how turnover came down because when productivity enhanced, and this was stated by a lot of firms in Lahore and Karachi, that when productivity got enhanced because of a better defect analysis, so the labor and the workers were able to produce more pieces. And in terms of Lahore, we even witnessed an increase in item production from 10 pieces a day to 15 pieces. And then it's all about the piece rate that the workers get, and then their income increasing. And again, through the Kaizen dashboard, we had a lot of accounts at how the workers' truancy or absenteeism that reduced. The performance was totally depicted on these boards, and this kind of improved. And we have a whole section on this in this report on that.
Okay, I mean that's totally good. We would the other thing you would also were very interested was on the sustainability part, because you touched upon it, and the enterprises did mention that they would need further support on this. But something that is a question within the EU as well is that how much is the enterprises able to understand the need to have compliance? Because I think one of the ideas regarding this was also and not for the large ones, but mainly medium to small, because compliance would be the reality for trade in the future, because if you're not compliant, you won't be able to export to the EU at all, because then, and that's across the supply chain. So we do understand that some of the big enterprises do understand this need of compliance and how to work on it. But what was the change in understanding for the medium to small size enterprises on how they have to work towards it? Because, and then also how it translates into productivity and competitiveness. So that was
sorry to cut you off, but I believe I would like to redirect this question of yours to Nawab Saab and Harun Saab, because this is what they talked about at length in the focus group discussions. And maybe, sir, if you can answer, because I mean, of course, it's a big ticket firm that you are part of, and we did saw certain aspects that you are still complying to, and then you mentioned about them.
Yes, very pertinent question, but it applies to large organizations that are forced to or that have to apply all those things. So we are part of SCCP now. We recently completed Accord. And besides that, all the other compliances which are at global level, not just restricted to you, we are part of them. We have to do that. So you see, इसमें एक aspect जो बहुत crucial है for small and medium enterprise.
Exactly.
Affordability factor.
That's the point.
अब उसमें अभी हम लोगों ने GIZ के साथ 4 प्रोग्राम शुरू किए हैं. Isme, what we have done is, if you've heard about the COP program, Community of Practice, isme we take on board a small or medium enterprise, we share our practices with them, we train them, and then they go back and implement it. The cost effectiveness lies there. See, they don't have to invest on anything. Compliance ke liye jo hardware requirement hai, that's the only investment they'll have to make. They don't have to hire consultant. They don't. So that COP is one of the, I think, key programs that will help them from our side or from GIZ. They're bringing two organizations together. Compliances के बगैर तो होगा ही नहीं कुछ भैया.
So that's what we understand. And basically, in our different engagements with different partners, what we've realized is that large enterprises or the large factory owners already understand this because they see
Yes.
what's coming. But under the due diligence, it's the supply chain, and under supply chain, we have the small and the medium who would be coming in, and they would have to live with it, and they have to see the understanding of it. So this was one part. On the methodology, I just wanted to understand for my thing, because I saw you use 4 different methods for this, which if on the DAC criteria, which also covers quite a holistic picture, you went into outcome harvesting, which is also a connection in outcome harvesting. You gave us some good percentages, but on the percentages, I would also want to understand if these percentages were gathered through your knowledge surveys, or were they done through generic surveys on based on whether how it was useful or not. Because I saw a little overlap in the methodology, and I was a little confused when you were presenting on where does the line actually fall between the 4 methods, and why was the particular need towards going towards these 4. I'm sorry if this is going beyond this, but it's just to understand your findings, because your findings are very important for our upcoming evaluation as well. And we would be really interested to see where these bridges came, because you touched upon sustainability, you touched upon various aspects of impact, and then under the DAC criteria, the impact also comes in. You said that there was a coherence part as well. So all in all, that on the policy side, we were also interested to hear a little more, because I think you touched upon it was on the sustainability side, because we also are aware about the labor codes and the present status of it. There are some rules of business that are being worked upon. What is the way forward? Because you met different stakeholders, what are they planning to do with it once ILES stops? So it would have been more interesting. Maybe it is there in the detailed report and it's not here. So just these generic inputs. And as I mentioned, that EU in its coming programs, we've just launched. In fact, we are about to sign a very prolonged program, which is going to be with the UNDP, again working on business and human rights. And we also have another one which would be focusing on the environment. So hopefully we will continue to support the sector. And we hope that Pakistan's export sector comes at par with what the requirements are coming, so that it doesn't face a trade cut. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your pertinent questions. And I really intend to reply to all of them, and I've taken a note of them, but just in the interest of time, because we still have a second round of intervention pending, and also the participation from the audience, and particularly the online audience. So we'll definitely getting back to you, the logic of applying 4 techniques, how they are reinforcing each other, how one is based on quant data, how the 3 others are based on purely on the data that we collected and the synthesis of the documentation, the very extensive documentation around this program that we went through. So we will be replying to all your queries in detail around this, and especially if I get this opportunity in the question answer round. But however, I would like to go to a very quick second round of intervention, and just basing it on the aspect that during all the data collection, during all the interviews, especially with the enterprises and with the worker component, there was an across the board endorsement for this program, especially for the enterprise pillar. And even the enterprise respondent, they discussed what should be the design tweaks, how they require a phase 2 of this program, how implementation in just 1 or 2 departments is not enough, and how it would be more optimal in terms of impact, in terms of output, if it can be across the board. So just putting forth a very simple question of our outcome harvesting technique, that is, so what? What's next? So what if you're done with the launch and the implementation of this program? What's there next in terms of sustainability, in terms of continuity? Guillermo, especially coming to you, would ILO would be supporting it, because we even received suggestions that how it should be, rather than a phased approach, now it can be a concurrent approach of taking along some 100 or 200 firms together for a longer period of time, we had if Harun Saab can remember, I remember that statement very well. That how one leather firm in Salcott received the program for 2 months and they called it a miracle at their store. And they wanted this miracle to continue for at least 6 months. But when we were interviewing them, it was the last day of the program on 27th of last month, I think so. So what's next? What if you're done with this program? What is the continuity sustainability part, the implementer point of view from ILO?
So we get that question a lot because
We're quite curious to know if there is second impact assessment coming up.
because of course, as you see, the enterprises themselves are not only the two that we have here, they do value and they see benefits, direct benefits from the intervention. So that I think that's, of course, our interventions end, and then if we don't have funds to continue them, then we can't.
Okay, so you're looking at the donor.
Yeah, but that's another conversation. But in any case, I think the way we have designed the intervention is that it is somewhat sustainable in of itself. We've heard already that the enterprise improvement teams have been institutionalized and they continue irrespective of whether the ILO is there. The work of the consultant is not to direct and pinpoint you need to do this and that, and then out they go, but rather to create that cultural change, which I'm grateful that you brought it up, because that is the basis of the objective was that to create that cultural change in which workers and line managers identify a problem and work on it together to solve it. Ideally for us, a work that is well done is one where they don't need us anymore. And to some extent, the evidence that you have provided points to that direction. Of course, it's not guaranteed. People change, institutional and cultural inertia takes over. But to a certain extent, I'm quite content that at the enterprise floor, we have seen that these initiatives are self-sustainable and they have grown. We've heard some enterprises that says we piloted in a line, it works, and now we're extending to other production lines and other facilities in our company. So that in what next, kind of the ideal question will be, yes, we'll be there and we'll scale up to 500 and 2,000 enterprises. I'm sorry, no, that's not going to happen. But what is next is it's mostly contingent on the enterprises themselves. And I think we are working right now with the trade associations. So through them, they can implement these core trainings to the enterprises that we did not cover. So great for the 50 that implemented SCORE, the 25 that implemented others. They already have the tools to grow and continue it. But there's thousands that were not covered. But they are covered in trade associations. And I believe that and what we're working on now is to hand over these tools to SCORE. It was developed by ILO, but we are not proprietary. We don't believe it's ours, and we're jealous in that only us, it is only us that can implement it. We want to hand it over to the trade associations, to PREGMIA, to PHMA, so that they then can facilitate it to their own enterprises. I think that for us is the most gratifying when the ball starts rolling and then it rolls on its own. And we want it to roll through the trade associations as well.
So Harun Saab, same question to you, the way forward, and especially the sustainability part, where I think so there are a lot of expectation from the implementer for self-sustainability. And like, how do you see it for your own firm and
I think there's a two-part of question. One, how the previous project can be sustainable. And the second question is, if there is some ILES 2.0, then what that would be.
Exactly. You're placing it in the right manner.
Yeah. The first question, if we talking about the first question, we definitely have a obligation enterprise, so that must be continued. And if we talk about our company, we develop team, monitoring team, evaluation team, and we involve in both teams the top management. I mean, the person who are actually paise de raha hai, the owner of a company. So he's involved into both teams. So जैसे हमने assessment में भी देखा, once we got top management on board in any project, that project sustainability a bit longer than others. So we commit to make it sustainable in our organization. So this is the answer to your first part. And the second part, if there is ILES 2.0, then I suggest, as we talked about earlier as well, there must be a 3 course we need to design, 3 program we need to design. First, the companies who are at the intermediate level. Secondly, the companies at, I mean, the basic, intermediate, and expert. If we implement the same project into the small company and the artistic millionaire, so I think there could be a gap between or in a small and a large. So some company, I mean, cannot get the fully actual essence or actual fruit of this from this project. For example, अगर मैं small company की बात करता हूँ तो we directly talk about lean, directly talk about VSM, directly talk about Kaizen. But small companies वो हैं जहाँ पे 80% people cannot know how to write their own names. How they can understand Kaizen, how they can understand, I mean, the other tools, VSM, small company के ऊपर मुझे थोड़ा सा यहाँ पे आपने जो किया कि up to 500 is small, so means we categorize Sialkot 80 or more than 80% into small. जो हमने categorize किया हुआ है, that is around less than 200 is small, or 150 till 150 is small, 250 up to 250 is medium, and 250 plus is large in our region, in our Sialkot region. If we talk about less than 120 employees company, that means there's multiple aspects. If we just talk about the financial impact, they do not have that much financially sound, so they have independent industrial engineering department. Without IE department, how we can perform VSM, how we can implement lean. So if we design, this is pure my own thought, so I definitely, अगर किसी को इसके से इख्तलाफ है तो I really excuse on it, but मेरा ख्याल है कि if we design some program for the basics, कुछ चीजें कि आप ये चीजें कर लें, जैसा मैंने बताया कि हमने अपनी कंपनी में VSM नहीं किया, but हमने क्या किया, we just start implementing some forms and formats, some information, some data gathering, data are coming into the table so that we can make a decision based on data. जब डेटा की बेस के ऊपर हमने डिसीजन करने स्टार्ट किए, बहुत सारे चेंजेस आए हमारे. तो आई थिंक if there will be a ILO, I mean ILES 2.0, so मेरा ख्याल है कि इसको करना चाहिए इस तरह से. This is my own thought.
Thank you. Thank you. Bilal sir, your thoughts on the post-program impact and sustainability, like as implementer, what do you think?
Thank you, Dr. Freya. I think I don't want to repeat what Guillermo have said. And why don't we utilize this time to ask our colleagues from EU, or the donor, what are their plans? So I think for the sustainability, for the program impact, I would say I agree with what Guillermo have said. And let's just save time and take our comments from EU.
You want to know what our future plans are?
Exactly. Yes. I mean, we're quite optimistic about, designing 2.0 phase 2 ILES. So I mean, just
I think this is again a different conversation. So considering this validation workshop, I would not want to discuss what EU thought process inside is, and knowing that this is live streaming at the moment. But in general, as I've clearly mentioned, that EU would remain committed to support Pakistan, because where Pakistan is exporting a good chunk of its exports to European Union in different parts, and and EU is a key trade partner to Pakistan. Similarly, EU also values its relationship and its trade relationships, especially when it comes to textiles and ready-made garment industry. So we would continue to support this, and I think that's the reason why the GSP Plus exists. And with the new compliance requirements, we would continue to support it through our different programs. We have some in pipeline with our different implementing partners, and we are engaged with the government at different levels as well as with the private sector to continue this relationship.
Because you had mentioned on the policy side that we've talked mostly about enterprise, the result and the impact on enterprise, but less so on policy. And I think it is important to note that it did come up in the report that there is an important cultural change, particularly in the enforcement side, and I think that is something we invested heavily in the project, in engaging with inspectors, arts inspectors, labor inspectors, so that their work could be made more efficient, so that it could be made faster, and also engaging in this process that it's not only about enforcement and punishment, but rather labor administrations are there to help and facilitate rather than just to punish. So I think that I personally came rather late in the project, so I was not as involved in that part of the process. I'm very glad to hear those results. Now the policy development, and Saliha touched upon it, it's much harder to work on policy because it's necessarily political. So, and I believe, and going back to your questions, where has the project been more effective? It has been more effective where we have been able to work around the politics rather than with the politics. And the past years in Pakistan have been very turbulent in terms of politics, and I don't think that has helped deliver with the speed and impact that we wished. So, and we see that with the development of different rules, the capacity to report and adapt and even ratify new conventions. Pakistan hasn't have ratified a labor convention since 2006, and other countries are continuously ratifying. So I guess that is just to say that when we enter the political arena, things get much slower and much more delicate, and we see that also with the labor code discussions. And I just want to make the point because it appeared in the presentation of the report that Pakistan Workers Federation and others have signaled that they haven't been engaged in these political discussions. And I think that is not a fair assessment of the level of engagement that we have engaged to some extent. We've worked with them in defining the process and made decisions jointly on the extent to which they want to be engaged. And now we hear back that they haven't been engaged enough, but that level of engagement wasn't decided with them. So there are conflicting views on that level of engagement, and of course it can always be done with more engagement, but the process has not ignored our social partners, that's for sure.
Sorry, just one point, and that's on the clarity on the policy side. My point was more around the sustainability footprint, because one of the fears that we have at the EU is that this project has engaged, because as we saw in the presentation, a lot of slides were dedicated to enterprises, but we want to see what are the plans on the papers that have had significant level of investment. Like, for example, labor codes can be one, but there are rules of businesses which have been invested into. There are other advisory things. There was a mention on the technical notes that have been developed, or in terms of ILS reporting, when the ILES finishes, well, because every year Pakistan has to report on different conventions. So what happens after that? What's the level of capacity in terms of sustainability to that investment that has gone in through this project and through EU funding for this particular purpose? So if, like for example, if a policy paper is totally ready, it has been done through quite a consultative process. And ILES is ending. So would that pay, who would follow up on those on those particular papers? Would there be any entity taking it forward? Has there been a discussion on this, or whether they would land somewhere in the racks, which is, I think, a reality in most of the development projects, and that's what one of our concerns would be. That's
If you would like to.
Sure. So just like I mentioned before, it would be ideal if we do the project and then the needs of our constituents are met and met forever, institutionalized. That's hard because of the, as was mentioned before, the rotation, the political change and the change in people. So it involves it's rather a continuous process, and we have strived to institutionalize some of the processes, so reporting to the supervisory bodies on international labor standards. There's the ILS committee has been institutionalized. The provincial tripartite committees have meet regularly. I think that we can see that as a success. I also think we could have done more. I think we could have been more have more intention in saying, okay, we set up these committees and these are the standard operating procedures. And by March 31, you need to do this. And by July 31st, you need to do that. I think we should have done that, and we didn't. And I think that would have gone a longer way in institutionalizing the process and isolating the gains we achieved at the policy level with isolating that from the rotation of people. So I think we've trained people. I don't think we have yet trained fully the institutions in charge. And I think that is a self-criticism that we make internally, and I think something that we need to improve on moving forward.
Just adding one point to what Guillermo said, but I mean, despite all the things that we have already discussed, there is this one, I mean, hope when we talk about the sustainability on policy interventions, and that would be through different workshops. At least now, let's say Department of Labors of different provinces, they are aware of what could be done. So this, at least giving them this understanding that where we lie and where we need to be. Example on minimum wage. So through workshops, through giving them this awareness on how globally things are going and where Pakistan lies on policy level. So I think this is an initiation. It's a push force that this project has given. Yes, I completely agree what Guillermo said, that much more would have been done. But I think that at least on some fronts, talking about labor codes, about rules of business, or maybe updating the policies on minimum wage, or maybe OSH and others, and the technical notes, I feel it's a completely subjective perspective that at least this project has helped the institutions to also introspect, also see where we lie as an institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all our panelists, for such rich discussion and thought. And I would like to move to the audience for questions, and especially later on to the online audience that's present with us for a long time. So yes, please.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Umaima. So this is just a question out of mere curiosity. So you guys, I mean, a lot of discussion about these enterprises, it revolved around the social and governance aspects. And we're calling this project the International Labour and Environmental Standards. So I wanted to know if there were any environmental aspects that were incorporated into this program, like introducing renewable energy or any water saving techniques or something along those lines.
I can take that question. Yeah, so this project has the labor and the environmental component, and we have talked solely about the labor component because the environmental side has been the subject of another impact assessment. So just like we have done on the labor side, work at the policy level in updating regulations so that it meets international labor standards and supporting enterprises in partnership with WWF, we have done that same thing on the environmental side. So they have engaged with the environmental protection agencies at the provincial levels, supporting their capacity to monitor environmental indicators at the district level, but also kind of close to around factory clusters, and also work with factories themselves to identify opportunities to improve their resource efficiency, their carbon footprint, etc. So, but we haven't touched upon that because the focus of this evaluation impact assessment has been on the labor components solely. But that there is a parallel report coming on that. There's 11.
Is there any question in the chat box? No, there's none. Okay, sure. Sure. So, any more thoughts from if someone like to contribute, and then we.
Well, from the enterprise point of view, I think it's a metaphoric statement. You see, because of the rush for production, because continuous pressures, at times we fail to realize the shortcomings. So this program came in as an X-ray or an MRI, which gave us the inside picture of what we were missing. Does it make sense?
Exactly.
Because all the aspects of the program, like Kaizen, he mentioned Muri Muda, identifying the wastes, the lean side and the Six Sigma side. Although we didn't implement it through this program or at that level, but it gave us an insight in how we can actually go deeper and try to resolve the problems. That's my metaphoric explanation on this program.
Thank you very much. So, thank you very much for your time and for your very thoughtful discussion and views around the program. We're extremely grateful, and we would like to thank all our esteemed panelists and the participants, our online audience who have been with us for the past more than 2 hours. And yeah, definitely, I mean, we hope that the interventions made by this program, whether they're on the legislative side, whether they're on the enterprise side, they continue, and this pillar of our economy gets supported through our implementers, through our donors, and again, through our firms who are actually contributing to our GDP. So again, extremely grateful. Thank you very much. And we officially close this validation workshop. Thank you.